Good morning and welcome to science class. Today we are going to cover topic 5, cell structure and organization. In this unit, we are actually going to learn about the basic microscopy and scientific drawing skills. We are going to look into main structures of animal and plant cells and also about how cells are organized in humans. And before the holiday started, we actually have covered a little bit on how to use the microscope and actually practiced on how to draw scientific drawings. So the microscope. What is the microscope? The microscope is used to view very small objects, for example, cells. And all living organisms are actually made up of cells. These are pictures of actual cells that can be found in cats over here, and you have a rabbit blood right here that is made up of cells, and you have leaves that are made up of cells, and also insects also have cells. And to view cells, because they are so small, we need to use an instrument, and which is the microscope. We actually learned how to use this, and we actually learned about their names of the parts of the microscope as well. So let's try to recall what this part right here is, and this is called the eyepiece. Over here, this is what we call the coarse adjustment knob. Right here, which is called the fine adjustment knob. It's much more smaller. And this part right here that actually holds the lenses, this is called the turret or the nose piece. And we have the objective lenses right here. There are 3 different magnifications that we can use. And right there, that is called the stage. That's where you put your slides. And you have the stage clips right here where you put the microscope slide to hold them still. And lastly, you have the mirror to focus light so that you can actually see the image of that cell. And lastly, this is the base. I hope you guys remember that when you actually carry this microscope, you use this part right here. And you hold the base with the palm of your hand. Alright, so let's get into today's learning objective. Today we are going to state the function of the cell wall, cell membrane, cytoplasm, the nucleus, the chloroplast, and the vacuole. What is our step to success for today? We are going to identify the structures that can be found in cells. That means that you need to know how it looks like, and when you look at it, you're like, yes, this is it. And after you know how it looks like, you should be able to state the name of the structures that can be found in animal and plant cells, and also state their function as well. What do they do? So we are going to mainly look at typical plants and animal cells for this objective. But firstly, what are cells? The cell is the smallest unit of life. And to carry out their functions, cells have small structures that are inside them. So cells are not just like a cell with like parts without parts. It actually has little parts in them. They are small and they have smaller parts inside them as well. And those smaller parts are what we call organelles. In here, so let's just have a look at this video right here that tries to pretty much zoom in on an animal cell. So this is a human being, and we belong to the animal kingdom. So let's try to zoom. So this is 1 time and 10 times going in. So that's 1 centimeter and zooming in, and then you can see that you are made up of tiny bits of cells. So let's see right here. So I'm going to pause right there, and you can see that the human tissues are made up of single cells that come together and they perform a function together. So that is 1 cell, and it's about 10 micrometers in size. And you can see that this animal cell right here also has little bits and pieces on the inside that actually are what we call the organelles as well. Alright, so when we were actually practicing how to draw the cells, I hope you guys remember that when you draw animal cells or even plant cells, you should draw using a sharp pencil, and you also have to label using a ruler and a pen. So when you're labeling, that means that you have to use a ruler and a pen so it is a very straight line, but however, drawing the cell itself and the parts, you use a sharp pencil. So for the animal cell, you need to draw and just label these parts only, so you should only identify these parts. So how to draw an animal cell? You draw a circle just like that, and this line right here is what we call the cell membrane. After that, you label the inside part that is within this line of circle, and this inside area right here is what you call the cytoplasm. And then after that, you draw another circle inside that circle, and this part right here is what we call the nucleus, and that is all the parts of the animal cells that you guys just need to remember. Now let's look at plant cells. Again, when you are practicing drawing a plant cell, you should use a sharp pencil. And when you label it, you should use a ruler as well as a pen. So you only draw these label parts. So the outside part, this time it's not the cell membrane, but this time it is called the cell wall. So note that when we draw a plant cell, we draw them kind of like a long rectangular-ish shape like that. Okay, now we draw a similar shape but a bit smaller on the inside. And that is finally, we have the cell membrane. Now we draw another circle, a small circle right there, and that is what we call the nucleus. Then you draw little circles on the outside, not circles, sorry, little kind of oval shape. I usually tell my students to draw them kind of like grains of rice, and those grains of rice things right there, you call that the chloroplast. And then you draw another big ovally shape in the middle right here, and that is what you call the vacuole. You also need to label this part right here, which is called the cytoplasm. Okay, so what are the differences between the animal and plant cells? So what we can see right here is that animal cells have what we call irregular shape. It means that when they are next to each other, they might be big, they might be small, even though they are the same type of cell. However, in plant cells, if they are the same type of cell, they are regular. It means that they are very, very similar to each other and very consistent in shape. Second differences between animal and plant cell is that animal cells, they might have small and temporary vacuoles. Sometimes some pictures or images might label the vacuoles, but we don't necessarily need to draw them. But you need to know that they might be there and they're temporary. However, for plant cells, they do have a vacuole, and that is very, very large, and that is very permanent. So this middle part right here, this is what we call the large and central vacuole, because it is stuck in the center of the plant cell. Okay, the outermost membrane for animal cell is the cell membrane. However, for plant cells, they have the cell wall instead. And one more thing is that plant cells, they all have green chloroplast, and animal cells, they do not have this. So this is the major differences between the animal cell and the plant cell. Okay. Now let's look into the functions of those parts of the cell. So this line right here is called the cell wall. And the cell wall's main function is actually to provide structure and also protection for the cell, and it helps to prevent the plant cell from bursting when it takes a large volume of water. Only plant cell walls are made up of cellulose, by the way. Okay, next we have this part right here, which is the second line that we would usually draw. This is called the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a structure that can also, it can definitely be found in both plant and animal cells, and it controls the movement of substances that goes in and out of the cell. And cell wall is also called semi-permeable. Semi-permeable means that it can allow only some substances to pass through, or small substances to pass through, but not all substances to pass through. Next is this layer right here, this area where all the organelles are sitting in. This is called the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is a jelly-like material, and it contains dissolved nutrients and salts and structures called the organelles. And it is where many, or we say the site of chemical reactions, actually happen in the cytoplasm. Next is the nucleus, which is that part right there. The nucleus contains genetic material. For example, the genetic material is called DNA. So you can find your DNA right inside this nucleus. And the nucleus, therefore, its main job is to control the cell activities. So it tells the cells what to do. Next, we have the chloroplast. So the chloroplasts are these green color organelles, and these organelles called chloroplasts, they contain a green pigment called the chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is a pigment that can absorb light energy so that these chloroplasts can carry out photosynthesis. They also contain enzymes that are needed for photosynthesis. So if you haven't heard about photosynthesis before, photosynthesis is the process by which plants make food by using the light from the sun. They use water and carbon dioxide to make glucose. They also produce oxygen gas from this process, and only plants can carry out photosynthesis. Animal cells do not carry out photosynthesis because we do not have these organelles inside our cells. All right, next we have this middle part right here called the vacuole. So the vacuole is filled with cell sap to help keep the cell swollen, and using this thing called turgor pressure, and it helps to keep the plant cells in shape. The cell sap also contains, and therefore they store, water, minerals, for example magnesium, and dissolved nutrients, for example sugar. So this is another function, which is that they store water and minerals. So the vacuole, what we meant by keeping the cells in shape, I'm sure you've seen this before, where you have a plant that has actually, it's what we call in Malay layu. So that is wilted or wilting. So when it is wilting, it means that the leaves don't have enough water. So what happens during wilting is that the vacuole doesn't contain enough water, so the vacuole shrunk and it doesn't push the cytoplasm to the cell wall. Therefore, it kind of loses its shape. Imagine it kind of like wearing a belt that is way too big, so your pants don't fit. However, if the belt fits perfect and it's tight, and then it gives you a nice shape, and that is what happens when the plants have enough water, so that it gives them enough shape. And therefore the vacuole, once it's filled with a lot of cell sap, it helps to keep the cell very swollen using turgor pressure, and this is what we mean by keeping it in shape. Alright, so that is basically all of the organelles and the structures of the cell that you guys needed to know. So let's go back to our step to success. Firstly, we needed to identify the structures that can be found in cells. So firstly, we have our animal cell, and that right there is the cell membrane. Animal cells have a cytoplasm, and on the inside they have the nucleus. That is the basic shape of an animal cell. Next, we have to also know the structure of a plant cell, and the outermost layer is, or membrane, is called the cell wall. Finally, they also have the cell membrane, which you can also find in animal cells. And they also have a nucleus, which animal cells also have. However, they have these special structures, organelles, called the chloroplast. They carry out photosynthesis that animal cells don't have. And they also have a large central vacuole in the middle. They have a cytoplasm, and this is what animal cells have. We don't have vacuole, by the way. Not permanent and large, at least. All right, the second step to success is to state the name of the structures that can be found in animal and plant cells. So both plant and animal cells actually have nucleus, cell membrane, and cytoplasm. However, plant cells have cell wall, large central vacuole, and chloroplast. So this is what is special and different about plant cells, and both of these are what animal and plant cells have. Now we have to state their function. So what is the function of the nucleus? It is to control the activities of the cell. Cell membrane is to control the movement of substances moving in and out of the cell. The cytoplasm is the site of chemical reactions. Cell wall is to protect the plant cell from bursting. And the large central vacuole is to store water and minerals, and note that the vacuole is permanent in plant cells. And chloroplast has a main function to carry out photosynthesis. That's pretty much it, and we are done for today's class. Thank you so much for following this lesson, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!